Welcome to Card Players The Circuit with your hosts, the Donkey, the Cub, and the Caveman.
Booga, booga.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Circuit. We are here at the Festa Al Lago 5 from the Bellagio. Scott Huff, Gavin Smith, and Joe Sebok, the new Caveman. Caveman 2.0 over there. It's a very... We're going to need to have our thinking caps on tonight, though, ladies and gentlemen, as we have a very special guest and a very serious topic to discuss. Congresswoman Shelly Berkley will be on the show to talk about the internet gambling legislation that has gone down that is threatening your personal freedoms. So we're going to discuss that with her. And we also have a statement from Bill Frist as well to read, one of the spearheads of the aforementioned legislation. Also a very great show for everybody today. We have a Hand of the Day, Poker Talk with Big G and the Baby Kangaroo.
Boing,
Some
boing.
phone calls, 877-675-1306 is the line to call if you want to talk to us, and some emails as well. I'm going to do some emails. How's it going, gentlemen?
Oh, you know, it's
Good.
going. It's going.
Any poker in the last 3 days for either of you?
Yes.
Really?
Did you play?
Yeah, I played last night.
How'd you do?
Bad.
Drinking?
Yes.
Yes.
Where'd you play?
The poker room.
What were the stakes?
What was I playing, Danny? You remember?
I'm trying to find out from Danny.
Super producer was...
Seems like it might have either been 2-4 or 3-6.
$3,600 dollar or three?
no limit?
3,600.
3,600.
I
I was up 7,000 really fast too, and I ended up losing 10, so I'm kind of pissed off.
I heard you were quite inebriated.
Yes.
So you weren't at that point you were talking about where you have, 2, 3, 4, and you're like in the zone. You were past that point where you get the edge off?
No, and then there became an issue of somebody deciding that we all needed to be drinking shooters. And let me tell you something, shooters...
Who made this decision?
This girl at the other table.
Nobody I know, though.
Her name's Chantel.
Oh, I do know her.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shooters.
Shooters.
Is that different than a shot? I mean,
It's the same thing.
Oh, okay. So just shots. What were the shots of, Gab?
Washington apples.
Those are really good.
Yeah.
I've had them before.
I think
They're very tasty.
I think I had about 10 of them.
And I'm assuming the final 6 players here at the Festa Al Lago 5 were not out doing shooters last night. We're going to have one of our tournament reporters bring over the results to us, who those final 6 are, and their chip counts. They are collecting them right now. I can give you some news, though, from earlier in the day. Brandon Cantu, first one out in 18th place after coming in 4th in chips, guys. The circuit curse continues. It is no longer make a final table. It is now dust off your chips in the first level. Jay Tilla the Killer, Alex Jacob, and Brandon Cantu all doing so after coming on our program.
I don't know if we want to say that, though. It's going to really kill our ability to pull guests in.
Yeah, it's not. That's not what you want to tell people.
I could just see the next show. And on the show today is some guy in a jacket we saw walking around. Let's get him on the show.
Joe Tehan is not going to rectify the one-hit wonder possibilities here.
He got done dirty as well.
He got done dirty as well. He ended up in 17th place. Juan Carlos Mortensen, known only as Carlos Mortensen to most people, 14th place. The grinder finished in 13th. So he should be adding, I went and did some research, he should be adding about 96 or so Player of the Year points. Last year, Kathy Liebert ended in the same place in a field of 420. She got 96 points. It'll probably be exactly the same. So Grinder tacking on a little bit, making it a little bit tougher.
Making the mountain slightly larger for somebody to climb.
Captain Tom Franklin ended up in 11th place. And, of course, fan favorite of the vegetarian community and jars of peanut butter everywhere, Chris Celery was eliminated in 9th place.
That's so bad.
His cousin Jim Butternut Squash was eliminated on day 1. Now it's time for some poker news. Poker news. It's Slamastica. I really wish I could have gotten through that joke without having a lisp all of a sudden too at the last trigger word. Antigua and others gear up for lawsuit against the U.S. Antigua says that the U.S. is still in violation of World Trade Organization sanctions, and I have some questions to ask Ms. Berkley when she comes on the show here in a few minutes about this as well. But Antigua and the U.S. have both recently filed submissions on the U.S.'s compliance with the World Trade Organization's decision that the U.S. was violating international trade agreements with its gaming policy. This article was courtesy of Michael Friedman at cardplayer.com. In 2003, Antigua filed its complaint, and in 2004 and 2005, the World Trade Organization ruled in favor of Antigua's complaint that U.S. attempts to restrict access to online gaming sites was in violation of the WTO policy. The WTO ordered the U.S. to comply with the rulings or face sanctions by Antigua, and then the U.S. allegedly did nothing to rectify the situation. So next week, third parties, which are Japan, China, and the European Commission, will submit their recommendations on the case, and a WTO panel is scheduled to receive a rebuttal from Antigua and Barbuda on the U.S.'s submission in 3 weeks U.S. will then have a chance to respond 2 weeks after that, and the WTO panel will convene in November and issue a final ruling in January or February of 2007. So already in motion there with the WTO, as was expected. And then today, an announcement from NetTeller saying that they actually are reversing their decision and they are going to follow the jurisdiction of the UIGE Act. Here was their statement. NetTeller, a company registered outside the U.S., will comply with the Act and its related regulations as if it were subject to the Act's jurisdiction. This action is intended to ensure that the company is able to continue to operate with the support of its principal commercial partners and to protect its shareholders, business partners, employees, and reputation. So that's not a good sign.
Knee-jerk reactions.
So NetTeller obviously being a big one. Danny over there chiming in. He says, no, not good.
No, it's not good. And again, I just wish people would relax and see exactly what the ramifications are going to be on this. I mean, everyone is making all these decisions before anything has even happened, really.
Well, they did. They went on to say various provisions of the Act, including the obligations of financial transaction providers such as NetTeller, remain unclear. Right. The uncertainty should be largely resolved when the Secretary of the Treasury and the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System issue the regulations they are required to prescribe within 270 days.
Right.
By the way, before it escapes my mind, I just want to give some props to our producer, Danny Egelhoff, for setting up the interview that we'll be doing today with Shelly Berkley. That was huge and shows a real conscience to the poker community. And when he came in, didn't even know who Phil Hellmuth was. Now, a little poker genius.
Commitment to excellence.
And now it's time for some poker talk. Bring it.
And now it's time for Poker Talk with Big G and the Baby Kangaroo.
I want Big G to lead this one off because I haven't heard his sweet voice in my ears that much so far. Gavin, we were just discussing on video, and I'd like to continue it here on the circuit. The TV final table bubble. We talk a lot about the final table itself and the pressure under the lights and all that. We go over it pretty much every final table preview show. I want to talk about the actual situation where you're there. It's the final seven, and how you personally exploit this situation, but how others also, in your opinion, react to it. The TV final table bubble.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I really do all that much different. I mean, there's definitely people out there that are playing a lot tighter because they want to make television. So, I mean, obviously those guys you'll pick up the aggression a little bit on them and try to help them make the TV table. But most of the time at that point, we're getting to the stage where the money's starting to go up a lot, and people are typically playing a little bit tighter anyways. And so I'm usually already pretty aggressive at that point and firing pretty good.
Right.
Sebok?
And the bottom line is, I mean, it's any bubble. The TV bubble certainly is one that we're very conscious about because it's television. But it's any money jump. It's when you first hit the money. It's every time that, anything moves up, you go to the TV final table, all these things. But I was just going to say, the whole concept is something that, it preys upon people that care about these things. In poker, it's so advantageous to not care about the money, to not care about the TV, to not care about any of these things and just play the game. So as much as we all do care, of course, it's so helpful if you can suspend that and act like you don't care, and it does help you overall in the game.
It's more of the pressure situations that you discuss constantly. Right. Any pressure situation is a place to push a little harder.
Absolutely. And if the pressure doesn't get to you and it gets to somebody else, then that's definitely an area where you can squeeze someone.
All right, now it's time for our hand of the day.
Nice hand, sir.
I love that.
Nice hands.
We're going to be discussing a lot of, maybe a bit more about men win when we discuss the final table. CK Wall, one of his proteges, correct? Brandon Cantu eliminated 18th place. This is from our live updates log. This was pretty dirty, gentlemen. Brandon Cantu bets $32,000 from under the gun, and Joe Pelton calls. The flop brings the 10 of diamonds, 7 of hearts, deuce of hearts. So 10, 7, deuce with 2 hearts. Cantu bets out $40,000 on the flop, and Pelton makes the call. 9 of spades comes on the turn. Cantu now bets $100,000. Pelton calls, and the river is the 9 of hearts. Cantu bets $200,000 and calls after Pelton moves all in over the top. Pelton flips up the 9 of clubs, 7 of clubs for a full house. 9's full of 7s.
Dear.
Cantu turns over 7-7 for a flopped set and rivered full house. 7's full of 9s. And that was as I said, they came in. It was very early. It was in the first maybe 20 minutes of the day. And Cantu would come in fourth place with like $780,000 in chips. And Pelton had over $1.2 million. Talk a bit about this hand.
Pure filth. You want to take it, Gavin? You want me to?
Well, I mean, it's a sick beat. For sure. I don't think really Joe Pelton did anything particularly wrong there in the hand. I mean, I think it plays out the way it's going to play out is once he makes the pre-flop call. You know, he made the pre-flop call when the bet came in on the flop. I mean, Brandon would have done a continuation bet with, you know, basically anything he raised with. So, you know, it's very possible second pair is good. So, you know, Pelton takes it off to see what happens. And then, you know, once he hits 2 pair, I'm a little surprised he didn't raise on the turn a little bit, but you know, calling's not that horrible. And then the gross card comes. So I mean, I don't really think there's anything all that wrong with the hand, other than the fact that it's gross for Brandon.
Wow, I have to disagree.
Of course you do.
That's what makes great radio.
Well, you know, it's not even a suited connector. He's calling a raise from somebody, one of the few people left in the tournament that can hurt him. You know, Joe obviously was a chip leader at that point, but, you know, I wouldn't necessarily want to get in with one of these treble hands, 9-7 of clubs. Then the flop comes down. Now, the problem with the flop is there certainly could be draws out there. You have second pair, which I definitely agree with Gavin. It could be good. You don't know. So maybe you call there, maybe you raise. I mean, I would probably raise, of course. You know, obviously, I am a proponent of playing that way. Gavin obviously is more of a caller, as you guys know. But once the 7 comes on the turn, I mean, my money's getting in. I've got 2 pair. I certainly don't want to be counterfeited if he's got 2 jacks and a 10 ball or was it a deuce? It was 10-7.
Deuce.
It was deuce. If the deuce comes on the river, all of a sudden you're counterfeited. You know, at least you want to give him something to think about. So. You know, and then once he makes the 2 pair, the money's getting in. There's nothing else that you can say about that. But I probably would have never even been in the position to make the hand. You know, had I been Joe Pelton, I wouldn't have called with that hand, and I probably would have been a little more aggressive.
What about the bet on the flop? Just out of curiosity, you have 64,000 in the pot already, plus blinds and A's, which I believe were 5-10. Mm-hmm. And what's the ante? Generally 2,000 at that point.
No, I wasn't at that point.
No, it was 5-10. It's what they started the day at.
Yeah, but I don't think the antes were 2,000. It was like 1,000.
Okay, so it's 5, 10, and 1. So you got another 16. You're looking at like 70-something, almost 80,000. What do you think about the $40,000 bet on the flop? Is that the right amount to bet? And the shell that he fires on the turn?
In my opinion, what he's doing is what a lot of players do, and they telegraph what they have according to how they bet. If they bet small, they have big hands. If they bet big, they have bad hands, you know. So, I mean, I've never even played with Brandon, so I don't know anything about his game. But it's one of the reasons that I tend to always make sure I'm betting the same amounts no matter what. If I've stone cold nothing, if I've stone cold nuts, you're still going to see the same amounts for me, and it's going to be consistent all the way through. So at least that's one less thing that you're going to be able to tag me for to figure out, you know, what I'm holding in my hand.
You're hard pressed to say there's anything wrong with the bet, though. I mean, you just get the man to put a whole bunch of money in, drawing to run a runner. So
right. All right, we have the chip counts in hand here for the final 6. Danny, a workhorse, courtesy of Danny Egelhoff yet again. Joe Pelton will take the chip lead to the final table with $2,923,000. Coming in second place will be David Baker with $1,652,000. Andreas Walnum coming in third with $1,374,000. Chris Loveland with $1,059,000 in chips. Steve Wong will come in fifth place with $886,000 in chips. And Can Kim Hua, CK Hua, with $765,000 will be the short stack, but not by much, heading into the final table for our full treatment of what we think is going to happen tomorrow. Make sure to tune in to the final table preview show. Now we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, your chance to talk to us right here on The Circuit. Barry Schulman's 52 tips for no-limit Texas Hold'em poker is now available at the Card Player Superstore for the low price of $14.95. This new addition to the 52 tips series contains everything you need to know about playing no-limit Hold'em. Written in a clear, concise, easy-to-read manner, 52 tips for no-limit Texas Hold'em poker is a must-read for the serious poker player. Visit pokerstore.cardplayer.com for ordering information. Welcome back to The Circuit, everyone. Scott Huff, Gavin Smith, and Joe Sebok from the Festa Al Lago 5 at Bellagio. The final 6 have been determined. Right now, your chance to talk to us, however. Danny Egelhoff, super producer extraordinaire, the workhorse, the mini genius, the man, take it away.
The myth.
Hey guys, this is Pat from Ottawa, Canada.
Canadian.
I just want to start out by saying that your show kicks ass, and just want to second the notion for a weekly circuit show. I thought a good idea might be to stick a couple more ads on there.
Great
if that
idea.
helps you guys with the whole money thing. I know you have a really loyal fan base, and we'd all like to hear more from you guys. My question is for anybody that wants to answer it. It just has to do with being more creative at the table. I think I'm a pretty conservative player, and I've had success with that, playing $5 sit-and-goes. And I know you guys are more aggressive, but just wanted to know if you had any advice for a more solid player who's looking to find ways to open up a little bit, be more creative at the table. All right, thanks a lot. Peace out.
Peace out, brother man. Thank you for all the love.
Yes, thank you for the love.
I think a good thing to do is to play even lower, extremely low limits, and just practice raising every hand. The bottom line with this creativity concept is that the more hands that you play, the more comfortable you'll become playing. The more comfortable you will become playing these different kinds of hands, and you'll get more used to it. Gavin is the wizard of poker creativity, so I'm gonna kick it over to him. He is not the wizard of speech and conversationalism.
If he switched the Kangol out for a beret or something, he could just be the wizard of creativity. Bring like an easel to the table.
Exactly.
No, I mean, Joe's kind of right. I mean, I don't know. You just got to mix. You just got to just try new stuff and find out what fits your thing. Maybe being more creative isn't exactly what you need to do, but I mean, you just have to try different styles until you find what you're comfortable with.
Right. I mean, if he wants to get more creative, it's like you're saying, maybe he does really well playing solid. One thing I did is when I first started, I was pretty tight, and I did all these things. One time I played online with Bear, and he, we basically were playing a no-limit tournament. He was saying, do this, and I was like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't get used to it. So maybe a good idea would be to play with somebody who to be a lot looser and a lot more creative, as you put it, and see that it can work.
Or invite Barry over to just, sit behind you and tell you what to do, too.
Well, I mean,
because he's likely to accept that invitation.
Right, and Barry's going to be up at the Niagara Falls tournament. I mean, Ontario's not but a hop, skip, and a jump ski.
I think
actually, I have no idea
found
where
something
Ontario
interesting in what you were saying.
Well, actually, Ontario is a province, and Ottawa is a city in the province of Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm an idiot.
It's
I didn't
not
even know.
exactly a hop, skip, and a jump. It's about
jump ski
4.5 or 5 hour drive.
Jump
Niagara
ski.
Falls to Ottawa. Yeah.
The wizard of Canadian geography as well.
I know.
I thought something interesting that you were saying there, though, when you were saying get comfortable playing these types of hands. Don't you think maybe it also, when you say play low, play a lot more hands, that it also just is getting used to seeing a bunch of different scenarios so you can get that feel for when, you don't have to have, top two pair for it to be good, when you can have bottom pair and have it be good because you're just seeing more hands in general.
Well,
seeing more scenarios with cards.
Right, and it's exactly that. Sometimes, your paired 6 is going to be good. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're going to let it go. Sometimes you won't. But it's exactly how you put it. You're just going to see more scenarios, be in more situations, and get a better feel for the game and what you should be doing in different spots.
All right, next phone call.
Hello, this is Sean from Toronto. I love Gavin as a poker player, but he should be careful what he wishes for.
Whoa.
With regard to government regulation of poker, I'd say leave us alone. Any honest student of economic history would realize government intervention is a detriment to prosperity. What the heck does government know about online poker? Government, by introducing this bill, is regulating poker and forcing players out of the comfort of their own homes. Online poker is not a threat to the lives of U.S. or Canadian citizens. Government's job is to protect the rights of its citizens, not the other way around. Thanks.
Yeah, he's dropping knowledge on you.
Pretty much, though. I don't think you actually said anything that I ever disagreed with, so I don't know where this is all coming from.
Well, no, I think you said regulate rather than ban. He doesn't think they should regulate at all.
Well, no, I mean...
That's a choice between two evils.
By regulate, I'm saying that, instead of making it illegal, they could tax it and make a good amount of money to maybe run this country a little bit better than they do.
Right, and I think what Gavin's saying, ideally we would like the system to exist the way that it was. With that said, the ban or the proposed ban is a possibility. So I think what Gav's saying is, hey, if you're going to take it that far, why don't you regulate it, tax it, make some money on it if you have to. I think everyone in poker would agree we'd rather not see anything change. But it seems like we're not going to get that option, so we're trying to go with the lesser of two evils if at all possible.
Well, speaking of people, of our fans that don't really listen to what we're saying on the air, I got this email today, Joe. Wow. Did they add another base? Let's see. There are 3 bases plus a batter, so that would be 4 runs at most could be scored on a home run. Stick to poker, Joey. And I'd like to come to Sebok's defense and say yesterday when you said it would be like trying to hit a 5-run home run, and you went on to say it's
not
impossible.
possible.
That was the point. pay attention next time. Stick to talking, because apparently listening is not your forte.
Who is this knucklehead? Who's this knucklehead?
I don't know.
First of all, I am a huge baseball fan, idiot box. Okay, guy?
Oh, boy.
And
here we go. No, we haven't had a Joey tirade on a listener in a while. Go ahead, Joe. Open up.
I'm not going to give a tirade. I mean, obviously this guy lives in a box or something, and he doesn't have a lot of, intelligent capabilities. So for me to then attack this young man, it's really not fair. It's sort of like punching your sister in the face, and it's not something that I'm going to do because I don't roll like that.
Off box, keep his big mouth shut.
He really should.
He really should.
Yeah, you really. It would be a good thing. All right, we're going to take a quick break. No more foolishness. Put on your serious faces. All right. Because when we come back, we are going to be talking about internet gambling legislation with Congresswoman Shelly Berkley right here on the circuit. Politicians now, celebrities, poker pros, politicians,
everyone,
artists.
Come to us,
Gavin Smith.
Come to us.
All right, serious. Ready? Put on your serious face. I want them to see it over the air. It just puts on such a serious face right now that they can see you and feel you.
Let's get serious. Let's go 3, 2, 1.
Card Player would like to offer you a few more reasons to subscribe to our magazine. First, we've reduced the subscription price of the magazine by 85% to $19.99. Secondly, if you subscribe now, you will receive a free copy of Barry Schulman's 52 Tips for Texas Hold'em Poker absolutely free. That's 85% off the newsstand rate and a free copy of 52 Tips for Texas Hold'em Poker, all for you if you subscribe now by visiting cardplayer.com and clicking through to subscriptions. All right, our guest, Democratic Congresswoman Shelly Berkley, waiting in the wings right now. But before we bring her on, we'd like to play her speech on the House floor from just a few weeks ago in response to the proposed Internet Gambling Enforcement Act.
On Wednesday morning, I came to the floor of the House to protest the fact that the Republican leadership was holding up the Department of Defense bill because they wanted to attach a ban on Internet gaming. It was more important to the Republican leadership to keep people from playing poker on their computers in their homes than passing a defense bill that would help protect our troops serving this nation in Iraq, Afghanistan, and the rest of the world. So the last bill that we passed before we adjourn on the vital and important issue of port security contains the ban on Internet gaming. What does a ban on Internet gaming have to do with port security? Absolutely nothing. This section was added to the bill in an attempt to fire up the far-right anti-gaming element of the Republican Party in time for this year's election. They couldn't sneak it into the defense bill, so they put it into the sports security bill. Mr. Speaker, I will vote for this bill because it addresses important national security issues. But I hope that the American people, those that are listening to us debate tonight, are aware of the partisan games that are being played with this bill by the Republican leadership in this Congress. I yield back the balance of my time and support all of the strenuous objections you have, Mr. Hastings, to this piece of legislation that is important, could have been good, should have been better, and isn't.
Congresswoman Shelly Berkley, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Scott?
Excellent. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate being invited on.
First off, if we could, I'm sure many of our listeners are already well-versed in the legislation that has happened over the past few months. But if you could, just give us a basic overview now that it's been signed into law of what this bill does and does not mean for the Internet poker player.
Well, let me make this as easy as possible. Essentially, the United States Congress banned banned gambling on the Internet, which means that if you're a consenting adult, if you're a 21-year-old poker player online and want to enjoy this recreational pastime in the privacy of your own home, the United States government has decided that you can't do that. And I can't think of anything more intrusive and a violation of our constitutional rights than that. Congress has no business interfering with people's right to enjoyment within the privacy of their own homes, especially if they're over 21.
I was under the impression also that what this mostly did, the act, was make it sort of put an impasse there for us to fund our own online gambling accounts, but didn't actually make it illegal for poker players to play online per se. Is that still where we're at as far as the legislation is concerned right now?
Yeah, but they didn't make it. Let's say they threw up a number of roadblocks, which, by the way, let us remember that this is political. This is part of the Republican Party family values agenda. Mm. The Republicans wanted to go home in order to campaign so they can pound their chest and say that they're protecting the moral values of the American people. This is purely political. But what they did is they prohibited banks and credit card companies from handling the betting or handling having people put their bets on credit cards. So it makes it extraordinarily difficult for an average Joe who wants to play poker online and wants to put down a bet to be able to do that.
And it seemed like from your speech, it's sort of been your speech in the House has become sort of a rallying cry. We have a MySpace page where people actually went on and posted a video clip. And earlier in the show, we played a clip of your speech in the House, and it seemed like you felt that the way that they pushed this through, attaching it to the Safe Accountability for Every Port Act, was quite an underhanded move. But it also seems now, from talking to you here on the show, that you have a problem with it at its basis as well, of what they're trying to do in curtailing our personal freedoms.
Well, I'm in favor of internet gaming. I represent Las Vegas. I grew up in Las Vegas, and I, with all the gambling and the gaming going on, I managed to turn out just fine. And my children were both born here, and they turned out fine. So, I just have a different perspective because it's been so much a part of my life from the time I was a kid. So I just found it very offensive on a whole host of levels. One is I don't think that, I think that if somebody wants to bet online, they have an absolute right to. Two, I don't think it's the federal government's business what I, as an adult, in the privacy of my own home, on my own computer, get to do if I'm not harming anybody. So I just thought this was outrageous. But it was the politics that really got to me. The reality, and I'll talk about the politics on two levels. One is because horse betting and lotteries have been exempted from this bill. So if you're a poker player, you're morally wrong, and if you're a horse better online, you're morally right. I mean, that's outrageous to carve out those exceptions. You're either concerned about people gambling or you're not concerned. But why is that? Because in order to get anything passed, and remember, this was pure politics, they had to make an exemption for the horse race industry, and they had to make an exception for the lottery industry. That's number one. Number two is, where is the nexus or the connection between betting online and port security? And let your viewer or your listeners know that when we were debating this bill, we wanted to put in, when we're talking about port security, how about security for our bus stations? How about security for Amtrak? How about security for railroads? No. And you know why they said no? Because it was a port security bill, and they wanted to keep it restricted to ports. And then, so they don't protect the bus system in this country. They don't protect the railroad system. They don't protect the Amtrak system because it's not ports. But it's okay to put a prohibition against online gaming in the very same bill that we're talking about port security. This was nonsense, and the only way they were able to do this is that they wanted to go home and pretend to their constituents that they were actually doing something. In a country where we are running deficits, we don't have health care for older Americans, our education system is unraveling, our health care system is unraveling, we don't have, we have dependence on foreign oil and dictators that are giving us our oil instead of having energy independence. So what's the thing that the United States Congress cares about? Banning online sports betting.
Joe Sebok had a question. No, okay. I guess you covered everything right there that Joe wanted to ask you. I wanted to...
Sorry, Joe.
No, that's fine. It's just nice to hear somebody with the enthusiasm, because I think a lot, especially poker players, we feel like, again, it's not even targeted at poker. It is this political move, as you said. So it certainly is nice to be represented in this. So, I applaud the fact that you're so involved.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll tell you something. This fight isn't over yet, but I do have to say something, and I'm hoping that all of your listeners are not only going to listen, but they're going to hear what I have to say. The other side was very well organized in this fight, and I can tell you, churches across this country were sending petitions and letters signed by all the members of their congregation asking Congress to pass this legislation. Now, I know there are literally hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions in this country, that are adversely affected by this legislation. Not a peep. Not a peep. And we need to be organized, and we need to let members of Congress know that there's another side to this story. And just like prohibition didn't work, this isn't going to work either.
Absolutely.
I also wanted to, on CNET News, I just want to read a quote here. They said that at one point, that Representative Shelly Berkley, a Democrat from Nevada, offered an amendment that would have eliminated what she called the hypocritical exemption by flatly banning all forms of Internet gambling. It failed by a vote of 114 to 297. Was that sort of your version of a bluff there to just prove the fact that they would not vote for this and would not decide against having these exemptions?
What I was hoping is if we could have gotten that passed, and again, I did want to point out the hypocrisy of this, but if we could have gotten that passed, then the final bill would have failed. Because there was no way that the horse race industry or the lottery industry was going to let this happen to them.
Right.
And the problem we had is that our poker players and other online bettors weren't organized enough to fight back. And we're going to need to do this better next time. But that was the theory behind that, is let the members of Congress see, A, the blatant hypocrisy, and B, maybe if we could get that passed, the fact that horse racing and lotteries were not excluded would have forced more people, more members of Congress to twice before they voted on this.
Was there a particular reason that those were, do we know why those were the exempt forms of betting?
Of course, money, honey. I mean, that's they inundate Congress with tons of money. The horse race industry has been lobbying for years, decades on Capitol Hill. There's a lot of districts within the United States, congressional districts, that have horse racing, horse betting, horse farms, and they're a pretty strong lobby. And they said, all right, we don't care if you ban this, just keep us out of it.
Right.
And they had Congressman Goodlatte, who's as far as I'm concerned, doesn't know what he's talking about. He was the one that, this was a Goodlatte bill. What does he have in his district? Horse racing. So who did he protect? Horse racers.
I have we asked Mr. Frist actually to come on the show, and he declined. But
let me mention something else.
Okay.
There was right after this was passed, the horse race industry was celebrating, and the head of the horse race industry issued a statement that this was a great day for horse racing because they were exempted from the law.
Wow.
And that because poker playing was banned and other types of gaming was banned on the internet, that this was good for horse racing because more business would come their way.
Right.
And that kind of says it all, and that's why Goodlatte was in cahoots with the horse race industry. A, they're part of his district. B, he just made these people feel awful good.
Well, we did, like I said, we did ask Mr. Frist to come on the show, and his office released a statement that I'd like to read right now, and I have a few follow-up questions for you.
Is that Mr. Frist?
That's correct.
Now, there's a joke. Talk about a giant hypocrite. This man is running for president. He's pandering to the far right and the fundamentalist Christian groups, who I have the greatest respect for, but this is what they wanted. This was their nonsensical Republican family value agenda, and this is what he cared about in the middle of a war with a huge deficit. He wants to take care of, he wants to protect the world from internet gaming.
Well, this is what his office had to say. The United States is a nation founded on the rule of law. We cannot allow companies to flagrantly ignore our laws just because they are based overseas. Shareholders and corporations that were betting on U.S. authorities looking the other way in the face of illegal conduct have every reason to be upset. It was a bad bet, and they lost big. This legislation simply put a mechanism in place to enforce existing laws that already made online gambling illegal. And what I wanted to ask you was, Charles Murray of the New York Times actually wrote an op-ed piece where he pointed to the fact that if he's saying that this is about strengthening the rule of law, that in fact when we pass such laws that so many people just find to be, for lack of a better word, stupid, it in fact weakens the strength of law. And I wanted to get your feelings on that assertion. I
couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that was the most nonsensical statement I've ever heard. That is not the reason this was passed. This was to promote Senator Frist's presidential ambitions.
And Charles Murray went on to assert that it's possible that in the short term this could cost the Republican seats. Do you agree with that or disagree with that? Just because a lot of people, even some Republicans, in fact, that play poker, are blaming the Republicans for the pushing through of this bill.
Yes, I do agree, but I'll tell you something. My poker players, my card players, people that enjoy betting online, enjoy this recreational activity in the confines of their home, they better get out and vote. Because it's not going to influence anybody if people sit there grumbling and don't do anything. In this country, you have power at the ballot box. If you don't exercise that power, then you don't have any. If you don't use it, you lose it. So all of these poker players, and I know people come up to me all over the country telling me how appalled they are about this. Well, I appreciate the conversation, but you got to do one step beyond telling the congresswoman who agrees with you how upset you are. You got to go to the ballot box, and you got to vote these people out. Because it may be poker today, God knows what it's going to be tomorrow. The federal government has no business passing laws like this. This was not how the federal government was set up. And we're going to let them do this tomorrow. This is the camel's nose under the tent. And you've got a group of people that would, and it's the same people my same colleagues, Goodlatte, Leach, all of these other people on the Republican side of the aisle that are so worried about the morals of the American people. First of all, they ought to clean up their own party before they worry about mine and your morals. But more than that, we have a responsibility as people that do think the other way and do appreciate that this has nothing to do with morals. It has everything to do with your entertainment and your right as an American citizen. Let's make sure we go to the polls November 7th and vote these guys out.
Why is the response to ban rather than to regulate? Is there any talk of the idea of regulating internet gambling rather than just trying to flat out banning it?
Pure politics. I mean, you can't go back to if you're pandering like Senator Frist to a certain group of people in this country that want to outlaw gaming, period. That's why I say this is the camel's nose under the tent. They wish to outlaw gambling, period. Right. Brick and mortar gambling, online gambling, sports betting, you name it, they want it gone.
I have a question for this is Joe Sebok, Congresswoman.
Hi, Joe.
Do you think that eventually it will be regulated? It just seems like it makes so much more sense economically.
Well, it does make sense, but if you're trying to pander to that group that wants to eliminate gambling, period, you can't have a fiery speech that says, and I just voted to regulate the gaming industry. Right. What they want to say is, I'm going to ban it, but I'm going to protect the morals of our children. I'm going to protect the morals of our country. I mean, that's a much more fiery speech. Doesn't mean anything. It's total nonsense, but it works.
No, but with all due respect here, I mean, how many states is gambling actually legal in? Do you know that? Like, I mean, they've legalized gambling in...
If I'm not mistaken, there are 48 states in the union that have at least some form of gaming.
That's what I thought. I just didn't want to sound stupid when I said it.
It's a rather large number. Now, not everybody has Las Vegas-style gambling.
No, I understand that. But if they've legalized gambling in 48 states, and obviously a good amount of income comes from that, how on earth can you say that this potential juggernaut of income is wrong and... When we're already making it legal in all these different states.
Couldn't agree with you more. You're 100%. The hypocrisy of this is this Gavin?
That was Gavin.
Yeah,
Gavin, the hypocrisy of this legislation is mind-boggling.
From InternetNews.com, they said that you made a statement that millions of Americans will continue to gamble with offshore sites. This bill makes gambling illegal simply because they do it online. It's ridiculous to think that this will stop online gaming. So, what do you see as the future now for the time being for online sports bettors, poker players, etc.?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I based that comment on the fact that we had a constitutional amendment banning drinking in this country. And it could not, I mean, this was bigger than a law. This was a constitutional ban. And the American people, by their actions, told the federal government this is not where they want to be. And this is an issue that government should not be involved in. And eventually, they had to eliminate the constitutional amendment that brought in prohibition. You cannot legislate morality. You cannot tell adults in this country what they can and cannot do if they are engaged in an activity that doesn't harm anybody else, that they wish to participate in, and that government should not be involved in. And eventually this too will pass. Now what the immediate reaction is, pretty much people are very concerned and they're looking for what they are going to do given the fact that this law has been signed by the president. But the reality is in time, people are going to bet online. They're going to figure out ways of making good on their wager. If they can't use their credit card, they'll figure out something else. And pretty much people are going to do what they have a right to do in this country. And it doesn't matter that you've got people in Congress that think they know better than the American people.
Just one more question before we get to the phone calls that we have for you. There's been some talk that organizations like the WTO will end up weighing in on this topic. What do you think that we can reasonably expect from some other organizations that may help us to reverse this legislation?
Well, I think I've heard the same thing about and that's the World Trade Organization. I mean, when a nation joins the WTO, there are certain rules and regulations that apply to everybody. What the United States Congress just passed and what the President just signed is clearly in violation of the rules and regulations of the World Trade Organization. So the United States is going to have to figure out what we're going to do. And if in conjunction with that, if we are in violation, if this law banning Internet gaming is in violation of WTO, which I think it is, that coupled with an assertive effort by the Poker Players Association and other organized groups that believe fundamentally this is a violation of their constitutional right as an American citizen, then maybe we can get we'll have enough leverage to change this law.
All right.
But I'm telling you, everyone's got to get organized. Let your congressmen and senators know how you feel about this. Inundate them. I mean, if you're a poker player online, you know how to use the Internet. Every congressional office in this country, every United States Senate office in this country is hooked up to the Internet. Let them know how you feel. Tell them that they will lose your vote or they have lost your vote. Politicians respond to two things, money and votes. You tell them that you're not supporting them and you're not going to vote for them unless they change this law. And then you'll see some action.
All right, we have a couple of phone calls for you here. Our producer, Danny, will queue them up. Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, hi, this is Mike in Iowa. My question is for Congresswoman Shelly Berkley. I was curious in this new Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act if there is any legislation against the individual poker player, whereas if they come up with a huge cash and they try to cash it into the United States, is there going to be action taken towards the player, or is the new law, the new act, so to speak, only against the banks and the financial institutions?
It's my understanding that this law does not go after the individual poker player.
I think he was also talking about if someone when he says cash is make some sort of, if they go and play a tournament overseas and they make money and then try to bring that cash back into the U.S. or somehow put that into their financial institution, if there's any regulation against that right now.
It's not under this law. Now, what the rules are of bringing money in to this country, that I'm not an expert on, and he'd have to check that out. But under this law, there would not be a problem. There may be other rules and regulations that would go to this, but not this law.
All right, next phone call.
Hey guys, this is Mike from New Jersey. This question is for Congresswoman Berkley. Basically, I just want to ask her, why did the U.S. government not want to regulate gambling? Was it because they didn't think they were going to be able to? Or, I mean, were there any other reasons? I'm doing a project for it, about it at school.
Say that again?
He basically is pointing back to regulation, which we spoke about, just why they would not regulate. It's basically a question that I touched on earlier. What I'd like to do, though, is quickly read you an email and then let you get the final word. Congresswoman Berkley, many involved in this discussion blame the Republican Party for the passage of this bill with little discussion in the Senate. Is that a fair assessment? Did the Democratic Party take the measures necessary to stop this bill? Was it their responsibility? Internationally speaking, are you at all embarrassed that our government has stated that large public companies traded on the London Exchange funnel money for terrorist activity and that our citizens' money can no longer flow there? Finally, how do you recommend that Americans, particularly the poker playing community, go about reversing this legislative embarrassment, which you've already touched on? Thank you again for your support on the House floor, and that was from Mike Herter in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Of course, we did talk on the need for political action and for everybody stepping up to the plate. At the very least, letting your congressman or senator and your senators know how you stand on this, and that if they don't change their vote or do something, they're going to lose your vote. That's number one. Now, your very first part of that question was
that many people in the discussion blame the Republican Party for the passage of the bill.
Absolutely. I mean, this was a part of the Republican family value agenda. They wanted July was a big month for that. We came back from the 4th of July recess, and the first thing we started doing is passing legislation that would make, that the Republicans wanted to satisfy their base. Didn't do anything else of importance, mind you. Haven't funded the government yet, mind you. Haven't done anything about the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, mind you. But we banned internet gaming. It's part of the Republican family value agenda. That's number one. Number two, could the Democrats have done anything? It's very important for the American people to know that there is one-party rule in this country. You've got the Republicans in charge of the executive branch of government, the legislative branch of government, and the judicial branch of government. Whatever the Republican majority wants to put on the floor for a vote, they get to do. And there's no way that the minority party can stop them. Now, once this legislation was sneaked, and they snuck it in, to the port security bill, who in their right mind is going to vote against this nation's port security, even if it had this provision in it? I mean, it was a done deal. Actually, a week before they sneaked it into the port security bill, they were trying to get it into the defense bill. Can you imagine holding up the defense authorization bill? We are at war. We've got 140,000 boots on the ground in Iraq, 20-some-odd thousand boots on the ground in Afghanistan. We've got troops in South Korea. We've got troops in Kosovo and stationed throughout the world. And these anti-gaming thugs in Congress held up the defense authorization bill because they wanted to put the anti-internet gaming ban, or the internet gaming ban language to that. And when that bird didn't fly, then they stuck it in this one at the very end. Right. But make no mistake, I mean, they were hell-bent on getting this passed.
His second question was, internationally speaking, are you at all embarrassed that our government has stated that large public companies traded on the London Exchange funnel money for terrorist activity and that our citizens' money can no longer flow there?
I don't have an answer for that. I'm not quite sure what the point he's trying to make.
All right, we'd like to give you the final word before you go. If there's anything else you'd like to sound off on here, I mean, we thank you so much already for your remarks today.
Well, Scott, Gavin, and Joe, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share what's going on in Congress with your listeners. Look, we are a powerful, poker players are a powerful group if they organize and let their opinions be heard by our nation's leaders. This is not the end of this battle. This is just the beginning. But we got to, if you're in the battle, you got to step up to the plate. And I'm counting on everybody to make their voices heard and their opinions heard. I can't do this alone. And I thank you all very, very much for bringing this issue to the attention of the American people. This is more than gaming, more than Internet gaming. This has to do with fundamental constitutional rights of American people. And believe me, they take this right away. I'll tell you something. If they're so worried about people spending money online, what happens if they ban everybody's shopping online? A lot of people spend a lot of money online shopping. Maybe we should ban that next. How preposterous would that be? This is just as preposterous as that proposal.
It would help me on my girlfriend's birthdays, though, so I may be the biggest lobby in the country for that one.
Would share that opinion.
Congresswoman Berkley, thank you so much for coming on the show, and we look forward to maybe having you on in the future. Thank you.
Hey, enjoy Vegas. Enjoy the Bellagio.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Sometimes we have commitments and are simply unable to watch our favorite events. Sometimes we just want to relive a record-breaking experience. Whatever your motivation, we here at cardplayer.com would like to remind you that you can relive every minute of action from the 2006 World Series of Poker by visiting cardplayer.com. Click on the multimedia section and you'll be able to watch hundreds of videos, thousands of photos, and even listen to archived shows of the circuit. Relive the 2006 World Series of Poker only on cardplayer.com. All right, we'd like to thank our guest today, Congresswoman Shelly Berkley, Democrat from Nevada, for coming on the show and sharing her cogent thoughts on the internet gambling legislation. I'd like to thank Gavin Smith and Joe Sebok for doing a wonderful job. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Everybody out there, get out there, do what she said. Get out there and let your state representatives know that you're not going to stand for this garbage. And
big.
Fight for your rights. We will be back tomorrow with the Final Table preview show. Final Table, 4 p.m. Pacific. Listen to our show beforehand or during to see who we predict to win. Good night, everybody.